Hello, this is Ruben from Property Solvers and welcome to another podcast. Today I'm here with Jonathan Rolande, founder of the National Association of Property Buyers and director of House Buy Fast, the home buying company based in Worthing. Thanks for coming on, Jonathan. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Good to speak to you today.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, so I think we last spoke probably about 5 years ago. We did a similar kind of interview to what we're doing today, but perhaps as a bit of a refresher, can you describe what the National Association of Property Buyers does as an organisation?
Yeah, of course. Very happy to. It's something that I think myself and everyone who is a founder member is quite proud of, really. It's an organisation that was set up in 2013. It's a non-profit organisation. So basically members pay a subscription and can join and help to really promote good practice across the property buying sector. So what that means in reality is that somebody who's thinking about selling can, for example, visit the website and see exactly what the options are for selling. So that could be anything from selling to one of the members, potentially, or not. So that could be an estate agent, auction, renting their property out, something like that. But if they decide that selling a property to a member is the appropriate thing for them, it means that they'll be using a member who's subscribed to a very strict code of practice that's overseen by the Property Ombudsman service, the TPOS.
Wow.
So that lays down a good framework of rules for property buyers to deal with everything as responsibly as possible, and also importantly gives a right of redress, financial redress, in the unlikely event that anything does go wrong. So it works really well. Members love it because they can be a member of an organisation that puts them head and shoulders above the average property buyer. And I think that property sellers like the reassurance that it gives them that they know everything's going to be okay, and if it isn't, they're covered.
They're covered, yeah, absolutely. And why did you feel there was a need to set up an organisation like this?
Well, I think like anything really to do with property, and I think that you could look at surveyors, estate agents, letting agents, builders, anyone. When people are having chats with their friends and family, quite often they're only negative sort of stories that we hear. The classic one is estate agents, and what people think about them. I think it's sort of up there with sort of politicians, really, at the moment.
Yeah, fairly universal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this sector also, unfortunately, had a similar reputation where there were some bad players who would reduce prices at the last moment without good reason, or generally play on people's vulnerabilities. And so by setting up the code of practice with the TPOS, it's really stamped all of that out. And, I think when you look at the vast majority of press about the sector, it is, at worst sort of neutral, but at best it is very positive. There's very little that's going wrong in the sector at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, that is a common practice that still does occur within our industry, where an offer is made on a property by a property buying company, or we buy any home, we buy any house type company, sell house fast. There's different monikers for what we do. And then as the sale progresses, the price gets decreased. And I'd be interested to know like how that's been implemented. How the control has been implemented with the Property Ombudsman. How did you actually how do you monitor that and see that it's actually prevented from happening within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly reducing the price at the last moment, at any moment actually, without good reason, is forbidden within the Code of Conduct.
Right.
So that's published on the site. It's on the Property Ombudsman site, and it's everywhere really that we say, do to members of the public, do check this, and if you feel that something incorrect or wrongdoing has been done to you, then by all means get in contact.
Right.
So the way that it's really prevented is by members signing up to this code of conduct. But I don't think you can ever, I think you really believe in transparency. You can never say never when it comes to price reductions. That's because when a company agrees to buy a property, they're often doing it unseen. So they sort of will say something along the lines of, well, your house is, potentially worth 250,000, but we'll be able to give you 200,000, whatever that figure might be.
Right.
If it then transpires that the property's got, all sorts of problems, the owner's been cheerfully growing Japanese knotweed all over their garden, or there's a subsidence issue, or whatever that might be, a planning issue or something like that. The property buyer can't really, in all good conscience, be tied in at that original price indefinitely, and come what may. So as long as they're transparent and say, well, look, we said that in good faith, that price, here's a survey to say you've got Japanese knotweed or whatever it might be, then they are within their rights to be able to reduce that price. But the owner is not obliged to accept it. So if they feel that it's not, they can walk away. There shouldn't be any penalty for doing that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If the owner hasn't disclosed a certain amount of information, which is quite critical for the sale to go through, then both parties are welcome to kind of walk away from the deal. Or if if there's some negotiation space, then that's fine. But I think the key is to get in there early so that the seller doesn't have their back against the wall and doesn't have any other options. So I think that's key in the whole process. And I think where problems arise is when the property buying company or the home buyer effectively goes back to the seller pretty close to exchange, or on the eve of exchange, for example, or even the day of exchange. I think that kind of practice needs to be kind of washed out of the industry. So really, it comes down to sellers approaching yourselves if they've had a bad experience with a property buying company or a national home buyer, or We Buy Any Home company. Do they contact yourselves directly if there are any issues, or do they contact the team?
Yeah, they certainly can do. We've got a phone number and email on the website, so they can contact us. We don't actually then police members ourselves. That's when we would hand the situation over to the Property Ombudsman service. They're more expert at doing it and also completely impartial. So they would then look at the whole situation, and if they feel that in your case that the reduction was without good reason, or at the last minute when it shouldn't have been, whatever the case might be, they'll look at the whole situation. The member has to provide TPOS with their entire file and cooperate with them fully, and then the TPOS make their decision and arbitrate between the two sides. And if necessary, we'll offer compensation, or they call it financial redress rather than compensation, but they'll offer that to the seller, and the member has to pay that.
Right. And have there been many of these kind of claims go through, let's say over the last couple of years, through TPOS? Have there been many that have been processed?
I'm pleased to say not, and I think that could be for two reasons. One, I think that a lot of members are playing by the rules and doing the right thing, so that's a positive. I think that the reason there may not be quite as many as people might expect also is that not everyone is aware of the NAPB, despite the fact that we're always trying to publicise it and speaking to you today, and we're often in the national press and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I think that not everyone is completely aware of it and of their rights. So that's why I'm always trying to spread the word and get the name of the NAPB out as far and wide as possible.
Yeah, no, it's great. And in terms of the other elements of the Code of Practice, could you perhaps run through those that kind of govern what members of the NAPB must adhere to? Could you run through some of the other? Yeah, that'd be great.
Of course, yeah. I think that I wish I printed a copy and had it in front of me now. But I mean, a lot of it is what you would just say is good common sense and good practice within the industry, and it follows a lot of what estate and letting agents and surveyors sign up to as well. So you'll have things in there, for example, that members quite rightly can't discriminate on the grounds of race or gender or anything like that. Don't have criminal records. Haven't been bankrupted, these sorts of things. They also it also ensures that everything is completely transparent. So if, for example, going back to your price reduction example, there was talk that a surveyor had reduced the value of a property, for example, due to some problem, that survey has to be made available if requested.
Right.
Everything has to be confirmed in writing. If there are going to be any charges, which most members, if not all, don't make, but everything has to be confirmed fully. Offers have to be confirmed, changes to price confirmed, and that kind of thing. So it takes any kind of uncertainty really out of the situation for sellers and members alike, really.
Sure. And is the seller, prior to kind of agreeing to a quick sell, able to contact the home buyer's solicitor and have a discussion with them with regards to this issue? Kind of preempt any kind of reduction in the price and make sure that doesn't happen. Is that a possibility? So we often get asked that ourselves.
Oh, is it? Right. Yeah, it's something that isn't within the code of conduct. So I don't think there's an obligation for a member to, allow that particularly. But I would always say for my own company and to anyone else, you would allow it because it's a perfectly reasonable question. And I would say to home sellers, if the person who's buying their property doesn't want it to take place and it doesn't cooperate with them, why not?
Yeah.
Is there something they've got to hide? So yes, it doesn't specifically mention that as far as I know, but it's a very good question, and I think one that should be asked really by sellers.
For sure. Just to protect themselves really before proceeding, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, sellers can do other things as well. They can look on Companies House. They can, look at the accounts, whether the company's got much money in their bank or on their accounts, who owns the company, when it was set up, and look at, of course, reviews. So that would be independent reviews on something like FIFA or Trustpilot or something like that, but also on Google, because those reviews are a little bit less easy to manipulate, whereas some of the sort of private ones, you can just suggest to people who are going to leave you a good review potentially.
Yeah, no, that is true, and checking the financial capacity of the quick home buying company is a must. Really, there's a lot of people out there saying that they're going to when they're not really in a position to move quickly. That does happen quite a lot in our industry. And so, in terms of a property buying company becoming a member of the NAPB, what criteria is generally required?
Well, we need to ensure that they are actually a genuine property buying company. So we ask for proof of transactions and funds and that sort of thing. We also have a detailed questionnaire about such things as criminal records and financial profile. And they then would also need to consent to signing up to the Code of Practice with the Property Ombudsman service. Right. I think that's the most crucial thing, really, because that's something that nobody who has got an intention to do something wrong would want to do. Mm. And that goes from, the out and out sort of scoundrels in the business, but also the sort of buyers that we all hear about in our own, cities and towns and what have you, which is the sort of, one-man band just going around and buying a property and smartening it up and selling it on. Mm. With those people, then there's nothing wrong with them, but necessarily, but you don't know what you're getting. You don't know, they've got no obligation to act in any particular professional way. They can do whatever they like. It's a bit of the Wild West, really. Yeah. With a NAPB, you have got that structure in place, and that should give a lot of comfort, really, to people.
No, for sure. And is the Property Ombudsman requirements, are those slightly different to what you request from a company or a home buyer looking to become a member? Do they have a different set of criteria themselves?
They would also look up similar information, I believe, and there's a fee that would have to be paid to them as well. Right. And also, as I say, signing up to the appropriate scheme. So the Property Ombudsman runs estate agency, letting agencies, and inventory companies, that kind of thing. So anything property professional related, and they all have their own distinct code of conduct, and you would have to sign up to the appropriate one, which would be a property buying company. Sure. That has its own unique set of rules.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, just kind of moving towards the end, the direct to vendor approach of buying property. Why do you think it's a growing space? I think it kind of exists side by side with auctions these days. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on why you think it's a growing area for vendors in particular.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think a lot of it we can thank the internet for, really, because it's very easy now to be able to just Google the sector at large, or sell my house quickly, or whatever that might be, and get a whole list of results. Whereas I think pre-internet, the sector did exist, but only by very limited adverts in papers and that sort of thing. So people really didn't know that it existed. And yet it's this enormous niche in the property market that even today some people aren't aware of. So I think that access and availability would be part of it. I'd also say really people are generally, there's a trend towards sort of taking control of their own finances and their own destiny a little bit in life in general. So the old-fashioned sort of ideas of banking, selling your car, taking out insurances, these sorts of things. We generally now want a sort of no frills approach where we can try different companies and just really get the best deal for us personally, rather than entrusting everything to a so-called professional firm as we would before. So I think that there are lots of parallels between this sector and the car sector, with the sort of motorway and We Buy Any Car and Cinch and those sorts of things, where are buying expensive items, £20,000 car or something, without seeing it. It just arrives on their driveway one day, or equally selling it in the same way. So I think there are comparisons there as well.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be situations where speed is more important than price. People just want to sell their property within a short time frame, and it's essentially it's pretty much impossible to achieve a kind of open market sale within a couple of months. Auction sales as well, you're often waiting for your property to appear in a catalogue or for it to get marketed, so you're still looking for a few months, whereas companies like ours, you're able to get things done a lot quicker. Yeah, there is the issue that we are buying below the current market value, but a lot of our clients are willing to kind of accept that in return for what is essentially a fast sale.
Yeah, and a certain sale. I think 30 to 40% of estate agent sales are still falling through.
Right.
So you could sell your property numerous times as well and incur all of the costs and the problems of that. I mean, I always remember some time ago now, but I spoke to a lady who was thinking of selling her property, and she'd inherited it, which you would, other than the sad fact that somebody had died, but you'd think this would be a good thing. You get a property really given to you. It was an awful worry for her. She was older. She was without an income, or other than a pension. And she said to me, I've inherited this house, which, I should be pleased about, but it's nothing but a burden. She said, I've got to pay for the garden to be tidied, insurance, council tax, all of these things. She said, I haven't got any money to do it. And so she needed certainty in order to release 80, 90% of what it was worth. It was much better to just get a quick sale than to keep having to find money to prop it up month after month while people in the local area decided if they wanted it or not. So that's the sort of classic case, really, where, exactly as you say, speed and certainty is perhaps more important than just the pounds and pence.
Yeah. We're also getting a lot of inquiries from landlords, tired landlords, people who are kind of struggling with Section 24, particularly if they own the property in their own names and that kind of thing. So often it makes sense just to kind of use a company like ours to sell quickly, rather than refurbish the property, get it back on the market, sometimes vacate the property, which these days is taking months and months. So sometimes if you don't do go down that route, the actual money that you end up pulling out in terms of proceeds is actually lower than you would expect, and you don't actually make that much money from it, relative to kind of selling through a company like Property Solvers. So yeah, just a kind of couple of last questions. From your perspective, what can we do in the industry to earn more trust from sellers about moving forward with these sell house fast options and we buy any home options? What do you feel can be done from, company owners like myself and James and other people in the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that really it's a case of being as transparent as possible. Nothing is perfect. As we touched on it earlier, sometimes sadly, sales do still go wrong even in our sectors. Maybe in the sort of more the bracket of 1%, I should think, rather than 30 or 40% of traditional sales. But even so, they do go wrong very occasionally. I think it's being transparent and explaining why, rather than just leaving people to wonder and feel that they've been cheated in some way, to make available paperwork, surveys, legal issues that may have cropped up that are just completely unresolvable, if that's the case. And explain it to them. I think also explaining the benefits of being an NAPB member, putting logos on the site and on paperwork and that kind of thing, and explaining what that means to people, that they've got a right of redress if things go wrong. And I think that just knowing that immediately shows that you're head and shoulders above, the average non-member buyer.
For sure. Well, that's great and really interesting. So, Jonathan, how can people find out more about the NAPB? Perhaps contact yourself. If you want to give us some more information about that, that'd be great.
Yeah. That's great. A free plug. Thank you very much. Well, I think the best way is to get onto the internet. It's napb.co.uk, so National Association of Property Buyers, but NAPB for short, .co.uk. Phone number and email is on there, as is a lot of other good resources for sellers. So alternatives, is selling to a member the right thing to do at the moment, or are there alternatives for you? You've also got the redress scheme details on there, the code of conduct that everyone signs up to. And if you do decide that it's the right thing for you, a complete list of members as well, and the date at which they joined, and a brief summary about each one. So it's a good one-stop shop to try, 1, 2, 3, 10 quotes, whatever you want to do to get an offer on the home. Then you can go with whoever you feel is going to be the perfect buyer for you.
Brilliant. That's great. Well, Jonathan, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And look forward to keeping in touch.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Good to talk to you as always.
All the best. Thanks.